I think there is something to be said about being born into a world that already exists. It is a human condition that when you're born, there are already established ideas, there's already a way of being, a certain type of behavior, a moral. And whatever that way of being is, that is your normal. There is no way about it. When you're born, you're simply born into a world and you're told the truth of that world, of how things are and why things are. And as a child, you have no option but to accept these truths because it is what it is. There is no way for you to examine. There is no way for you to know otherwise. At a certain age, hopefully, you develop an independent mind. You're able to examine the things that you know to be true. So if you take Hollywood movies, they might give you the impression that the person who is the more honest, who is more hardworking, is the one who gets the girl. However, applying these ideas into the real world would keep you single at best. In the first lesson in physics, your teacher would ask you, if you took an iron ball that weighs 1 kilo and an iron ball that weighs 100 kilo, and you throw them from a building, which one would hit the ground first? Intuitively, we all know that the heavier ball would hit the ground first. This is a good example because obviously it is not the case. And the people who observe it, and Newton who formalized it mathematically and spread the idea, have concluded that both objects, no matter what the weight is, have the same acceleration, have the same increase in speed as time goes when they fall. So if someone ever builds a machine, an airplane, that is based on the physical fact that objects with different weights fall at different rates, well, I wouldn't fly on that airplane, I wouldn't use that machine, because it is wrong. It is simply wrong. And you have ideas which do not concur, which are not congruent to reality, and you apply them, you would get a world that is the world we live in. A world there is a lot of suffering. Because if you take ideas which are not correct, ideas which are unexamined ideas, truths that you have inherited from your childhood, not through your own reasoning, which is most of the things that we do. Well, if you apply them onto society, onto your own life, you are going to get results and a way of being which does not serve you, first and foremost, and bears with it, again, frustration. I mean, consider the absurdity of our knowledge. Imagine a person standing on the sidewalk watching a street magician perform a magic. Amazed by what he saw, he calls his friend 8,000 miles away and tells him about it. This person is completely oblivious to the fact that he holds a device in his hands which enables him to speak with his friend 8,000 miles away. Completely oblivious to that fact. What he finds amazing is not this device, is the trickery that he saw the street magician perform. Why? Because when he was born, there was already a cell phone. And therefore, there is nothing to examine. There is nothing to wonder. That's a given. That's how absurd knowledge can be. It can make us act, behave in ways which are absurd. There is a simple test you can do with a friend. Go ask anyone you know, is the world round? People will tell you the world is round. Then ask them, what is the certainty you have on the world being round? And they would all tell you 100% certainty. The last question should be, can you prove it? You just told me the world is round, you are 100% certain. Show me, what are you basing this on? If it's a picture that he saw from outer space, keep in mind two things. I have Photoshop that I can show him the world is square. And second, we've known the world is round for over 2,000 years. Then going back to you, how do you know the world is round? And this is the realization. Here comes the realization that what you know is what you're told. Most of the things that you know to be true are things you were told to be true. and therefore they're true. However, you yourself did not think about it. Now this is a good example because you can just look at YouTube, prove the world is round, and you can see many ways in which you can show that if the world is round, things would make sense. And that's the proof the world is being round. That's the proof of anything. If it makes sense, if using your senses, using your own mind, you would come to that conclusion. And I wouldn't want to live in a society, obviously, that is also based on falsehood, that is based on truth, that were not examined, truth that were inherited, truth that came a part of the story of growing up in the time that I grew up. But the ability to abandon these stories, if they do not fit the reality, and far more important, examine these truths. You can live your life with truth unexamined. You would live a miserable life. You would live a life with confusion, with frustrations. Because what you know to be true is actually not true. And I think there are many examples, such as in The World is Round, that makes you question what you really do know. The subject that I love most is the distribution of pieces of paper throughout our society. Because in my mind, that is the reason we act the way we act. If we give value to pieces of paper, if anyone who has more pieces of paper than another has more claim on other goods and services, then it is very important how these pieces of paper are created. It is very important in the sense that it will structure society in a certain way. That is why I object vehemently to a world where a small group of people decide for others. Some people are born into a world where everything is the way it's supposed to be. And others are born into the same world and they see one option out of infinite number of options. There are infinite number of ways of being. And the world that we live in currently, changes, currently holds the truth that it holds about how society should be run, about central power, about the use of force and the use of violence. All sorts of established ideas, which I, for one, can see infinite other ways of being. Constructing a society not based on violence. That is my truth. That is something that is obvious to me, something that I have examined, that I came to the absolute conclusion. Power corrupts. Absolute power corrupts absolutely. You do not want to live in a world where violence can be used in order to do good. It is nonsensical. Violence, which is going to be my next video, has no place in our society, only against those who use violence. And if someone wishes to use violence for the purpose of doing good, should go to jail, should be removed from our society. That is my truth. To conclude, it is important, it is essential for a person to develop his own mind, to question what he knows to be true, and find ways within reality to examine these truths. Because there is no way of knowing, okay, what is the truth. At the best you can do at this point is realize that whatever you know is what you're told. But that realization does not immediately makes it available for you to know everything that you don't know. This is a process of discovery. Okay, you can do it in the university, you can do it in your job place, and you can do it right at home. But it is examining what you know to be true. And every time you find that what you know does not and cannot be applied to reality, abandon it. Realize it is not the truth, it is one of the many stories you were told.